A great many creatures that inhabit the dark ocean of our planet are seldom, if ever, seen. Such monsters tease our imagination, kindling our fear of the unknown. Tales of sea serpents tangle with impressions of the prehistoric marine dinosaurs and the reptiles that have inhabited this mysterious inner space, the sea. So, when the largest turtle ever seen is washed up dead on a British shore, crowds come to stare, biologists to investigate. Over 8 feet long, it has a huge heart that's powered this ton of turtle flesh for the best part of a century for thousands of miles around the North Atlantic. It is a leatherback turtle of massive size. But what has killed this ocean giant? What are these strange projections hanging down inside its gullet? And what part has the price of bananas played and plastic bags? How is an American biologist, Dr. Tundia Gardi, and some jellyfish involved? And, even more puzzling perhaps, what link is there with the parrots on several islands of the Caribbean? Who is the parrot man from England? What are the facts behind this strange story of Pretty Polly and the unfortunate ancient mariner? To the turtle, away from her element, this must seem a weird world. Biologist Tundia Gardi, with the lamp, has watched this ritual many times. Excess sea salt weeps from the turtle's eyes, blurring her vision of these intruders on her confinement.
Okay, you sit on this.
Sharks, killer whales, and humans are a leatherback's only enemies. How can she know these activities are solely for the good of her kind? That these are Earthwatch volunteers with nothing but the well-being of leatherback turtles at heart. How odd is the sensation of rising into the air. But instinct listens only for the beckoning sea beyond in the darkness. She'll be weightless in the ocean, and, lost in its expanse, her life will again be clouded in mystery. But tonight, she's gaining an identity, some metal tags that will be recognized each time she instinctively returns. Tundia Gardi founded this turtle project a decade ago, here on St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands in the Caribbean.
Leatherbacks have fascinated me since the first time I ever saw one. That first time was on St. Croix in 1981, and it was night, and I saw first the head of a leatherback come out of the water, and then the gigantic body behind it emerge, and just captured my fascination. They are so mysterious, so big, and so little is known about them, and they embody our relationship really to the sea, how little we know about the sea. Seeing the turtle go back into the ocean is really, I think, for all people that work with sea turtles, a source of great relief, because you witness the animal out of its element, struggling, and you kind of have an empathy for what it must feel like when it goes back into the water and is finally back in its home. They're so graceful in the water, so powerful. It's wonderful to see them, make their way through the waves and go back into the deep, dark ocean where they belong.
Tundi and her colleagues know the survival of these ancient mariners is a sign of the well-being of these island beaches and coral reefs. And there are island birds that are just as significant. Years ago, when Christopher Columbus made landfall among the islands of the Caribbean, the riches he sought were political and commercial, in particular gold. Today, English biologist Paul Butler finds living gold here. Parrots, he believes, are far more precious for the future of the island. This St. Vincent parrot is unique to the island of St. Vincent. Only 500 remain. These wild birds were being kept as pets until registered by a government amnesty and brought here for care. Paul Butler has made a name for himself as a champion of all Caribbean island parrots, and since the St. Vincent parrots were recognised to be on the brink of extinction, he and his wife have led the crusade for their protection, a crusade that's in the interests of everyone on St. Vincent. These birds are more than simply pretty pollies.
What a spectacular bird. The St. Vincent parrot is surely the most beautiful of the Caribbean parrots. But its beauty is not just skin deep, it goes beyond that. It's beautiful because it's symbolic of the Caribbean, beautiful, unique, endangered, just like the islands that it lives on. And more so, it can be used to sell a very important message, the message of conservation. We can use it to try and persuade people that they should be proud of their country, proud of their heritage. And really, it's much easier to use a bird like a parrot than a spider or a snake. I mean, gosh, how difficult it would be to build a sense of pride around a snake. And yet here's something brightly coloured, even talks. Not that it does that in the wild, but if you're a farmer or a poor person living in the rural communities, you can get a sense of feeling for a bird that can talk and that you can build human aspects to. And this really makes it a wonderful species to work with.
Paul's imaginative campaign for the St. Vincent parrot focuses on where the birds live, what feeding trees they need, and how they breed in the forests of their ancient island home. Their problem has been that it's not easy to hide from people, despite good camouflage, and people have not always been a parrot's best friend. How can the parrot be sure of the difference between Paul Butler and Forest Officer Johnson and unscrupulous poachers who can climb trees and thieve chicks? Beleaguered in a dwindling forest, their outlook has been bleak, pressured by people but also in need of their help. Their plight is much like that of the leatherback turtles on St. Croix. Tundi Agadi.
Daytime on the nesting beach is a completely different scene, and but for the tracks of the turtle, you'd never know that she had been there, and you'd never know that sand contains the eggs. The beach is a hazard for the incubating eggs because recreational vehicles can drive across the sand. Even unsuspecting tourists sunbathing might dig down and somehow harm the eggs. Once the female turtle has left the nesting beach and is heading for the deep ocean, she doesn't come back to monitor her eggs, and she doesn't know whether her eggs will have made it through to successful hatching.
The leatherback's last view of the island is the surrounding reef, shallow and sunlit and full of life until the point it drops away into the darkness of the ocean abyss. Unlike other turtles, this most massive of all reptiles is an animal of the ocean, and it's now known to dive to incredible depths in search of its food, jellyfish, some luminous in the darkness and the cold. Below 3,000 feet, a crushing 1,500 pounds per square inch or more must press in as it plunges down to reach the very deepest prey. regain its body weight, it must consume a good many jellyfish. Their slippery bodies are helped down the turtle's gullet by its lining of strange finger-like projections. The sunlit world to which leatherbacks must return is less welcoming now than the pristine oceans in which they evolved.
Most tropical places where there are sea turtles are places that are under heavy pressure from tourism. As tourism grows, the degradation of the marine environment increases. And everywhere where I've been, where I've dived in important critical turtle habitat, there's been some sign of damage. The best we can try and do is make tourism and animal conservation compatible.
Just as Tundi wants to help the turtles, so Paul is passionately concerned about the St. Vincent parrots. But unlike the turtles, parrots can be found and counted, a good start at planning how to help them survive. More and more people are living on the island. The forest is being cleared to accommodate human needs, but where can the parrots go without forest? Somehow, Paul Butler had to sell the idea that the parrots are vital symbols for the islanders, that the birds' survival is linked with their own. His unusual campaign is helping the foresters.
The forestry divisions in St. Vincent and Dominica are filled with magnificent people who work very, very hard with very little resources to get the message across. We must tell the farmers not that they have to protect the forest to protect a parrot, but more importantly that by preserving the ridge tops, the river banks and the forest reserves, they're helping themselves. The forests bind the soil that protect the rivers. Rivers vital for agriculture, vital for domestic water consumption. And that by protecting the forests, it's not only in their own interest, but in the interest of the wildlife that is part of their natural heritage. It's part of what makes St. Vincent or what makes Dominica.
Paul's strategy is lively and effective, as colourful as the bird. He wants it to capture the hearts and minds of the young, as well as the businessman and politician, those with the power to respond. And respond they have. The St. Vincent parrot was declared a national symbol in 1980. And for foresters concerned for all animals that share the parrot's home, the campaign brought more support and new laws. Antillian-crested hummingbirds help pollinate many forest plants that bear fruits for local trade. And some of the lizards, like the parrot, live only on the island of St. Vincent. Looking after Vinci means a whole forest full of creatures enjoy protection. News sheets and badges give the wild parrots a real role in the lives of children in the island schools. But knowing Vinci's alive and well should make everyone feel good. And that's what Paul Butler and his forestry colleagues are achieving. This morning they're visiting the Calvin Nichols aviary, where the parrots are being bred in captivity. The sexes look alike and so need to be inspected before pairing up, an intrusive procedure of which the parrots seem to take a dim view.
Just before the breeding season, all birds are checked by the forestry officer and a vet to make sure that they're healthy and ready for the upcoming breeding season. This is quite a stressful thing. The bird has to be caught, but it's in the bird's best interest. And the birds are released totally unharmed and go on to breed. And this particular bird has had 5 young over the last couple of years. And I think the forestry division in St. Vincent can be incredibly proud of its achievements, because this is not an easy species to breed.
Handling a leatherback turtle presents its own challenges. And unlike island parrots, they have a wanderlust that makes finding them a matter of chance. They are seldom seen unless in collision with a boat or tangled in fishing gear. They may be dead or just about alive. This one's been found off Newport, Rhode Island.
Fishermen who are on the sea day in, day out have an awful lot of knowledge about marine animals and about how the ocean works, and they're a wonderful source of information. They have seen an awful lot of marine creatures, and of course it's their livelihood, so they have a kind of blasé attitude about fish and other marine things. Yet the turtles hold, I think, a special fascination for them. And this allows us to establish some cooperation with the fishermen, allows us to go out on the boats and get measurements of turtles that are accidentally captured.
Where will this ancient mariner go now? And how is her fate linked to the island of Pretty Polly? The goodwill of fishermen is necessary if Tundi is to find out more about turtles. But the goodwill of farmers on a tiny island is essential if Paul Butler is to guarantee that its parrots have somewhere to live.
The islands of the Caribbean rely on agriculture, and private people on private lands are going to farm them for subsistence crops or for bananas for export. And we have to understand that this is vital not only for employment but also for the economies of the Caribbean. We must work together with the farmers so that they can have a good economic crop to survive on, and yet we can protect some of the natural heritage that's vital not only for wildlife but to protect soils and to protect waters. Soil and water that's important for the farmer as well.
Banana trees offer little protection from hurricane or rain for a soil once held tight in the shelter of a mighty forest. But on Dominica, an island north of St. Vincent, the people have retained forests as parks or reserves, and they enjoy the streams and rivers the forest generates. And these protected forests of Dominica are also home to a parrot unique to this island, a bird that's become another national symbol, with a little help from Paul Butler, just like the parrot on St. Vincent. And here the crusade for parrots is winning victories for turtles as well as enriching the islander's world. These clean, river-washed beaches are the sort of places where leatherback turtles come to breed. And because the rivers are clean, the reefs and the sea offshore are clean too. So turtles and parrots do have a link in the Caribbean. But where do plastic bags fit into the plot? The Caribbean washes the eastern shores of Costa Rica, another coast where leatherbacks are known to breed, perhaps the same turtles that cruise the North Atlantic. Unravelling further secrets of these turtles also brings Tundi Agadi ashore here in their tracks to probe carefully for their nests.
We really know so little about these animals, especially when they're out at sea. We have the luxury of their having to come to land to lay their eggs. And for that little bit of time while they're on the land, we can get some good information. Unfortunately, their requirement for coming to land also puts them at risk, because it's here where humans can do the most damage. In many parts of the world, every part of the world that I've been where these turtles exist, the eggs are considered very valuable, in some societies considered an aphrodisiac. And for this reason, there's almost nothing that can be done to stop people from poaching the eggs.
These men are good at finding the eggs. They're professional. It's illegal to take them, but there's a thriving black market for such a delicacy, and so they give little thought to the future for themselves or the turtles. Too often the efforts of a parent go to waste, but the turtles never know and simply return instinctively to the ocean and their mysterious voyage. Tundi can only search for clues that reveal what affects the lives of these survivors from the age of the dinosaurs.
Protecting sea turtles requires more than just measuring them or guarding their eggs. It requires trying to protect the habitats in which they live. These tropical areas are often misused. There are certain industries that cause pollution, and these in the long run will affect the turtle's survival. One has to travel up rivers away from the nesting beach in order to see what kind of environmental degradation there might be, what kind of problems will eventually impact the turtles themselves.
One problem is the price of bananas, fixed in far-off Europe to suit consumer demand, but wreaking havoc in the rivers of the Caribbean. Not only chemicals, but plastic bags used to speed the ripening of the fruit when the price is high pollute the rivers and the sea. And floating plastic bags can deceive a turtle. Leatherback turtles have eaten jellyfish in huge quantities for millions of years. This looked like just another jellyfish to this turtle. Another leatherback is dead, killed by a bag that covered some bananas that grew where forests once were alive with parrots. And maybe just because we want our bananas cheap. The post-mortem on that largest ever leatherback washed ashore in Britain in September 1988 recorded a verdict of death by drowning in fishing tackle. But almost certainly this tightly compacted piece of plastic blocking the entrance to its intestine starved this turtle to death. Once their ocean travels were plagued only by sharks and killer whales. Now the Gulf Stream carries a threat from people everywhere who seldom stop to think that simple actions, such as chucking away a plastic bag, may kill turtles on the other side of the world. But living turtles can also be front-page news. So, can their ninja popularity save them? Does their future lie in campaigns such as that for parrots on the islands where turtles are born? On the flag of Dominica proudly flutters the imperial parrot, national bird of the island. Islanders call it the Cicero. Once only this captive bird and fewer than 60 wild individuals survived. Paul Butler, working with the island's foresters, has launched Project Cicero on Dominica with a pretty Polly larger than life. Celia the Cicero, played by Paul's wife, visits the 70-odd schools on the island. The children are fascinated to hear about their own island parrot and are contributing to the purchase of 200 acres of wild forest for the Cicero. They want the project to be a success, and so do their parents. This pretty Polly could already be spared extinction by the inspired antics of the parrot man and his big bird.
This one look like a foo-foo. Listen it now. On nature's sun in the Caribbean Sea lives a bird of rare beauty. Oh, Dominica, let it be.
One day it's hoped some ciceroo raised in captivity will be released into Dominica's forest reserves. Meanwhile, the subject of Paul's previous project, the St. Vincent parrot, is doing well. Over 4,000 miles from the Caribbean islands, a St. Vincent parrot chick chips its way out into English daylight. Its first home will not be the forest of an island paradise, but an incubator in the Cornish home of a parrot breeder inspired by the infectious enthusiasm of Paul Butler.
I think there's a popular misconception amongst people in the developed world that conservation is about fluffy animals and about the forest. It's not. Conservation is about people. People cause the problems, and it's people who are going to solve them. People seen here, captive breeding the St. Vincent parrot in Cornwall, but more especially the local forestry officers in St. Vincent and Dominica, who are out there day after day in the schools teaching children, in the forest patrolling it and managing it. The parrot populations are increasing in the wild, they're breeding in captivity, and the forestry is now held in much higher regard than it was a decade ago. And these individuals are working with very little resources and very little money, and they're doing a job that is a credit not only to the Caribbean, but to the world.
Across the Atlantic, a not-so-ancient mariner is making its first bid for escape to the open sea, to the jellyfish paradise that leatherbacks are born to inherit. The research and the campaigning of naturalists such as Tundi Agadi and Paul Butler has led to the establishment of new laws and regulations, some to protect the turtles, others for the parrots, notwithstanding plastic bags, the banana trade, and a host of other local problems.
Despite all the difficulties, the ever-increasing tourism, the problem with poaching all around the world, problems of pollution and environmental degradation generally, the incompatibility of turtles and humans in many parts of the world. Despite this, I'm very happy to have had the chance to work with sea turtles and try and protect them. Leatherback turtles have an enduring quality. It makes me an optimist. It makes me think that because they've lived on the earth for 60 million years, these ancient mariners will continue to roam the seas for many millions more.